Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we're taking a look at Artifices, Deceptions, and Dilemmas. So this is the second in the trilogy of books by Courtney Campbell that we've been looking at. And of course, the initials of this are A, D, and D. All of his books have a reference to D&D in their title that way. And let's look at the back page here, or the back cover. No longer will your players complain about traps or unfair encounters. Now when they meet their doom, they will blame themselves for their own foolishness. Be as cruel and devious as you want with these guidelines on how to do so fairly. Now that's an attitude I can get behind. The cover here is done by Skull Fungus, as all of his covers are. And this is a print-on-demand book from DriveThruRPG. As usual, links will be down in the description below. The focus really here is on designing your own dungeons and the tricks and traps therein, and creating these kinds of challenges that players can understand and overcome through clever thought and clever play. Before we jump into the review though, quick shout out to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Mythos, a new D20 system by 3Hound Games, launching soon on Kickstarter. In Mythos, you can customize not only your characters but also the rule set, allowing you to easily adjust the game's complexity and playstyle. The game's world is packed with themed regions to explore, allowing you to play high seas adventures, eldritch horror, classic fantasy, and more. The combat system makes sure that everyone has something to do, even when it isn't their turn, and includes 8 different fighting styles. The Kickstarter is launching on July 15th. Click the link in the description below to learn more and get notified when it goes live. Here's our cover page, Artifices, Deceptions, and Dilemmas, Killing Characters Fairly. As a unicorn falling into a spiked pit, which is pretty funny. Here's our table of contents in the front here. Basically, we're looking at lots of different types of traps, lots of different types of tricks, and some advice on how to run those things. Introduction from the author. And we start getting into the different types of dungeon rooms. This is more like a manual for dungeon design in a lot of ways. I think I read the PDF version of this a long time ago, before it had been turned into a book. And it was a big resource when I was creating Marais, just because there's so much information and so much detail about the different types of dungeon rooms. At the beginning of the book, we get all the different room types. For example, an amphitheater, an antechamber, arenas, armories, arsenals, assemblages. Each of these has a full or half-page illustration done by Courtney, along with a short description of what that room is, and lots of little bits of room dressing. I think that's the most useful part. Especially when you start putting tricks and traps into rooms, you need to also have red herrings, and these can provide good examples of red herrings. So what would be in an arena? Things like draperies, flags, reliefs, sand, of course, braziers, coals, an earthy odor, blood, fingers and toes, manacles, chains, all the stuff that you can put into a room to make it feel a little bit more realistic, and also probably hide different tricks and traps you have there, or maybe act as activation for them. We have everything from banquet halls to bedrooms and barracks, bestiaries, chantries, chapels, closets, all your standard dungeon rooms, a conjuring room, crematorium, cairns, crypts, dens, divination chambers. Courtney has a very distinctive art style, which does remind me in a lot of ways of the kinds of art that you would find in early D&D, so I quite enjoy it for that. We have a section here on mechanical triggers and all the different ways that they can be used, like sensors and spring plates or electric plates, along with examples from classic D&D modules of how those were actually used in practice that you can either use yourself or tweak in some way. Latches, switches, and levers, lids, proximity triggers, just all the different kinds of triggers, each with its own little essay on ways that you can use that and ways to make it more fair for players. Next is a whole section on traps, and I really like his advice on just your mentality as a game master. When you're trying to deliver this information in a fair and neutral way, the way that this can affect you mentally and emotionally, and the way that you're often feel like you should be saying one thing, and he gives you advice on how not to say that and how to give players just the amount of information they need so that the challenge is fair. Arrow traps, bear traps, ceiling snares. He has great examples for how to provide clues for a lot of these things so that players can figure them out for themselves. Detours, lots of a big section here rather, on doors. Different types of special doors, elevators, falling cages, infested pits, mirrors. Mirrors, of course, are a classic way to have traps in D&D. How to run mimics, peepholes, natural hazards, reverse gravity, all sorts of great stuff like this. It's just a huge reference guide, basically, for when you're creating a dungeon. If you're just defaulting back to the spiked pit over and over, run through this book, get lots of new ideas of how to put more original stuff in there. After the trap section, we have Artifices, Deceptions, and Dilemmas, which is the title of the book. Really, this is the focus on tricks. So this goes beyond just a surprise attack, something that just does damage to the players. Instead, this is the weird stuff, the stuff that makes a dungeon a mythic underworld, that makes things surprising and confusing to them. For me, this is the best part of D&D, dealing with this stuff. And he breaks it down into different general categories. So bait, boons and banes, confusion or misdirection, along with lots of examples of those. So for example, for confusion, you could have a golden platter sits on the floor. It's not actually gold, but covered in yellow mold. Or perhaps signs that point a different way each time the area is entered. Or have multiple antagonists draw the party in different directions at the same time. You can have things that are defended, or of course puzzles, quests, random stuff, riddles, how to put in secrets. So a secret might be a nearby portal provides passage to different places based on the phases of the moon. There is a lot of space on some of these pages. I think he was really trying to keep each different type of trick to its own page, but I think some of these could have been condensed just to make things a little bit denser. Shops are, of course, a different trick that you can put in there. Terraformers that change the environment in some way. Time wasters. Tools, transports, transmutation, so a switch that turns a wall into an empty passable space, or a pool that transforms gems into enchantments for armor and weapons. Designing tricks, so if you want to create your own tricks, here is some guidelines for that. The important things you need is to have actual player agency, you need to have significant and notable consequences for dealing with that trick, and you need to have verisimilitude. The world needs to have a certain kind of internal consistency. Although, as he points out many times throughout these books, it's really a secondary consideration to having things that are gameable and are fun to play with. A big list of walls, floors, and ceilings just to make things a little bit more interesting, and a comprehensive list of things in rooms. So whether this might be machines or musical instruments or clothing, you can pick a general category and then go into a lot more detail. It's just kind of like a thesaurus in that sense, but a useful one in that it's very focused on D&D stuff. And that's it for Artifices, Deceptions, and Dilemmas. It's really a go-to book for me in terms of creating stuff for dungeons. And the advice here is really great. I've used it and it's formed my conception of how to run dungeons for a long time, back when these were blog posts, because this is an expanded versions of blog posts that he's done a long time ago and really fleshed out and illustrated and all of that. So this is available on DriveThruRPG, links in the description as usual, and check it out if you think it would be useful for you. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Before we go though, shout out to some of the new patrons who joined the Questing Beast Patreon last month. These people are Northumbrian Games, Carl Hinsey, Christian Smith, Tanner Mangum, Carlos Perez, Hypnocode, SM Kaitaya, Thomas Guarena, Paulie, Monty Anderson Ricks, Jay, Dr. Fugue, Joshua Barney, Yusuf Ravet, Big Les, Jacob Feltham, Martin Cuban, Colin Sarsfield, Ian Hargrave, Stephen Roman, Lee Fellows, Egg, Lance, Keats Wilkie, John Milligan, and Adam Baulderstone. Thank you so much, guys, for supporting the channel, and I'll see you next time.